Hi, my name is Penny Scott and welcome to the PowerPoint video on the Queensland Statewide Indicators Framework, otherwise known as the SWIF. The idea of this video is to provide you with a basic understanding of the framework and its components and how it might apply to your organisation and your projects. It supplements written material that you can find on the NRM Regions Queensland website, and we're also really happy to provide one-on-one support in operating within the SWIF framework. So you can contact myself or Lee Blacklock either by phone or email, and we can establish a Teams meeting, or we can even organise face-to-face training if it's going to be valuable to you. I'll provide the contact details for both Lee and myself at the end of this video. Right, let's get on with it then. During this session, we're going to provide you with an understanding of why we have a statewide monitoring system, what it is comprised of, the components of this system and its key characteristics, how it works, diving a little bit deeper into what it means for you and how it operates at your project and organisational level. And we're also going to show you some of the dashboards that you could actually use within your organisation to communicate your story about the achievements from your project. So why did we develop this framework in the first place? What was the problem we were trying to solve? Quite a few years ago, I think 17-18, the Queensland government did a review of the impact of the investments that they'd been making in natural resource management over the last 10 years. They really wanted to understand what impact it's had, what difference it's made in the landscapes and in the communities of Queensland. The review concluded that they don't know, they can't tell. We don't have the sufficient database or information to be able to really determine the difference that the programs of the last 10 years have made. So in 2018, the Queensland government decided that they would work together collaboratively with the regional NRM organisations to develop a framework in order to be able to track and communicate the achievements of their investment under the Natural Resources Investment Program, as it was called then, the NRIP. They really wanted to be able to clarify the impact of their investment and be able to, on an ongoing basis, argue the case for more investment in natural resource management. Clearly, natural resource management organisations who have been working collaboratively on the development of this framework are also very keen to make sure that the value of the investment that is made in natural resource management is really clear and well communicated. So we had a shared vision, and this vision is the foundation of the purpose of the Statewide Indicators Framework. The purpose of the SWIF is to be able to tell a Queensland-wide story that is, one, consistent, so we're all collecting data in the same way, at the same scale, reporting it back up at the Queensland level in the same manner. Credible, our reporting and data collection systems are sufficiently rigorous and robust so that people have faith and trust in what we're telling them. And of course, we want our story to be compelling. We want the story to highlight the value of the investment and obviously encourage more investment in natural resource management. I call these my 3 C's, a story that is consistent, credible, and compelling. But as well as being really clear about what we wanted the Statewide Indicators Framework to achieve and to produce for us, it was also very important for us to be very clear about what it is not. And it is not in itself a state of the environment or catchment condition monitoring framework, although the data that is collected through it could well be used to supplement other data that's collected for condition monitoring of a catchment or a region. It is not a research endeavour. We're not setting out to collect heavily scientifically rigorous research data, and it's not comprehensive empirical ecological monitoring. It is aimed at gathering sufficient data to indicate the general trajectory of a natural asset, such as land condition or vegetation condition, which has received program investment. So we are monitoring in a sufficiently robust way the general change in condition of an area within which we have invested and where we have conducted a project. So in order to do this, the Statewide Indicators Framework and the methods and data collection systems that fall underneath it need to be good enough to provide a credible indication of trajectory, but easy enough to be implemented by project teams, cost effective enough to be affordable within project budgets, and flexible enough to be applicable across the entire state of Queensland, and also to be applicable for multiple investment programs. It's really important that the framework and all of the methods and tools that sit within it are fit for purpose. So remember, I was talking about my 3 C's. We want a Queensland-wide story that is consistent and credible and compelling. But I'm adding a 4th C to that, and that is cost effective, because it's very important if we're going to have a long-term monitoring program and a long-term framework that helps us to tell a great story in the next 10 or 15 years, that it's affordable, that we can actually fit it within our existing program and project budgets. So we need all of those 4 things in place for it to be a fit for purpose framework. So just to reiterate, this is not about perfect and it's not about research. It's about a practical fit for purpose framework that will enable us to tell a fantastic story about the value of the investment we've received. So enough about the why. What is this framework? What is the SWIF? How does it work? How do you use it? So the SWIF is a collaborative, flexible framework which underpins monitoring of outcomes and deliverables for any investment program. It contains methods and data collection and analysis tools, and it does involve the collation and roll-up of data from all organisations running projects to tell us a statewide story, to be able to consolidate this into a Queensland-wide story. Many of you listening might have heard of the CATs, the methods that are being used under the SWIF to collect data, the LCAT and VegCat. But the Statewide Indicators Framework is much more than just a set of methods. There are 5 critical components to the framework, and it is a combination of these 5 components that enable it to do the job of telling a credible, consistent and compelling story Queensland-wide. So let's step through each of these components one by one. The first one is the investment program logic. Before you can actually start to think about methods and data collection and setting up field sites, you've really got to understand what it is that you're trying to achieve. What are your outcomes? What difference are you trying to make? What defines success? What would success look like at the end of your project? It's so important that we have clarity on this statewide and that we all agree on how we define success. Because if we're going to roll up a story statewide about the achievements of our programs and our projects, we need to agree on what it is that we're trying to achieve in the first place. So the first and most critical element in many ways of the Statewide Indicators Framework is an agreed logic, an agreed set of success statements that we are all working towards within our projects, individual projects. The important things about important features about the SWIF program logic is that it was originally built from the regions up. So it defines what the regions and what the project proponents believe that success looks like for their projects. We kept it very simple. I think you've all seen spaghetti diagrams of logic with arrows going everywhere. We've kept our logic extremely simple. Another really important feature of it is we distinguish very clearly between deliverables the things that you do, that you are paid to do, and outcomes, the difference that you hope you will make through doing those things. I think it's really important with any logic that you revisit it on a regular basis. Priorities change, programs change, the definition of success changes over time. So the SWIF program logic is very flexible. And the most important thing about it is that we come together on a regular basis to redefine success, to make sure that it's still articulated well within our shared logic, and to add components to the logic if we are missing something or new priorities arise. The most important thing, though, is that we all agree on any of those changes and additions to the logic. So as you can see, the structure of our SWIF program logic is extremely simple. You'll notice that at the bottom, you've got your project activities. Everybody knows what goes in there. The next level up are what we call the project deliverables, the SWIF deliverables. Those are the things that you are contracted to deliver on. They will be your milestones. X hectares of threat mitigation undertaken, X hectares of revegetation in place, X hectares of improved practices. Those are the things that you largely have control over, that you spend your money to achieve. Then comes the red line. And above the red line are the outcome statements. These are the things that you hope will change. This is the stuff that you hope to see a response in from your deliverables. So you hope that because you have done threat mitigation, you will start to see an improvement in the condition of your native vegetation, for example. It's slightly less in your control, but it's really important that we put a little bit more effort into monitoring whether or not what we did made a difference and had an impact above the red line. So we have tools and methods for collecting data about the deliverables, what you did, and we also have tools and methods for tracking changes and a response in your natural assets, your land condition or your vegetation condition or your wetlands condition above the red line. So you'll hear me talk now and then about below the red line and above the red line, and it's so important that we take both of those levels into consideration in our monitoring. As I said, the logic is a really, really important aspect of the Statewide Indicators framework because everything flows from that. The selection of your methods, the data collection tools that you will use, and the way you map your project is largely dependent on where your project sits within the program logic. Cool. Well, we've looked at component 1, the SWIF program logic. Let's have a look at component 2, the data collection methods. This is where all the cats live. So the data collection methods that sit underneath the SWIF are agreed by all parties who are operating within the SWIF. And it's really important that if we're going to collect data, particularly on condition change, that we use consistent methods so that we can actually add it all up at the statewide level and tell that consistent story about any achievements that we have made as a result of our projects. So once you've decided which of the outcomes that you live under, that your project lives under, then you come to the point of selecting which of the data collection methods you will use to collect data on your achievements. We were really keen on making sure we did not reinvent the wheel and that wherever possible we used or built on existing methods, providing that they were fit for purpose. And when we say fit for purpose under the Statewide Indicators framework, we need to make sure that these methods are credible enough. They need to result in sufficiently robust data so that the results can be trusted. But we also need to ensure that these methods are easy enough. we need them to be used by project teams. We need to ensure that the project officers themselves can go out and collect this data and apply these methods in a sufficiently rigorous manner. And they need to be cost effective enough to be affordable by projects, but at the same time, they need to be sensitive enough to pick up short-term changes. Some of the methods that we looked at are fabulous, but really for some of the attributes within those methods, you really wouldn't see much of a change for 10 or 15 years. We needed to focus on methods which were likely to pick up some of the lead indicators, some of those changes that you may well see in your vegetation condition or your land condition within the 3 to 5 year time frame. We also needed any method that we included within the statewide indicator framework to be applicable across the whole of Queensland. So it wasn't helpful if a method was only useful for rainforests and the wet tropics. We needed to make sure that whatever method was used and whatever attributes were included in methods were applicable for the whole state. So we have our logic and we have our agreed data collection methods. We could have stopped there. They could have been the simple 2 components of the framework, and people could have simply sent us their monitoring results to compile at the statewide level in PDF or Excel format. But we wanted to go further. We wanted to make this a smarter system, an easier system for project proponents to use, and also for us to be able to analyse it at the statewide level. So the third component of the statewide indicator framework is the smart tools for the regions component. And this is where a lot of the work has been done over the last couple of years on building and refining these tools. So the purpose of this component, as I said, was to make it much easier to collect and analyse the SWIF monitoring data. So there are a few key features of the Smart Tools component that we have developed. One is that we decided to build it within the ArcGIS online platform. It is an existing system that all regional NRM organisations already have, and because it is an out-of-the-box system, it doesn't require any ongoing adjustment and investment and maintenance. So that was definitely a decision. Our decision not to create a custom-built data collection system. The second key feature that is quite unusual with statewide data collection systems is that the data that is collected it actually stays in the regional with the organisation that collects it. So the system is decentralised. The first place that the data lands and lives is with the project proponents. We've had a lot of experience in the past where we've collected a lot of data, it's gone into a statewide system or a national system, and it is stored somewhere. We don't often get that data back. We don't have access to that data to analyse it and use it for our own purposes. The third feature of this system is that we endeavoured to make the most of existing tools where they existed. So if there was already a tool for a particular task, we made the most of that particular tool. We've also, another feature is that we've developed tools for collection of data at a range of levels. So we've got tools to collect data above the red line, the data that talks about the difference we've made at the outcomes level. But we've also got tools to collect data below the red line, the data about the deliverables that we have delivered. Our milestones. We've also got tools for the collection of people and communities data and other non-natural resource related information. I'll talk a lot more about these in detail later in the video, But just in a summary form, the 3 categories of tools that we have produced consistently for all project proponents include a standardized and consistent geodatabase for mapping your projects and coding them according to the SWIF logic, a set of Survey 123 apps for data collection in the field, but also people and community surveys, and thirdly, some Python scripting which enables the GIS staff in your organisation to undertake automated analysis of the data that's collected through your Survey 123 forms and relate it to the mapping that you have done within your geodatabase. The important thing about these tools is that they are managed centrally, and so every region and every project proponent has a copy of exactly the same tools, and so this really helps us with generating consistent data statewide. Okay, so we have our logic, we have our methods, we have our regional tools. The 4th component of the statewide indicators framework is the systems that have been developed to enable the rolling up of the results and the generation of a statewide story. So the statewide analysis system has been designed and built and is run by Lee Blacklock of NRM Regions Queensland. And it really is what makes this whole framework sing. As with the regional smart tools, it is based on an ArcGIS online structure. Importantly, the actual detailed data stays in the regions. It's the Python scripting that enables data to be provided to Lee that is already desensitized in nature. So at the statewide level, we get the summary information that we need to be able to tell a statewide story, but the detailed and sometimes sensitive information remains in the regions or with the project proponents. To the greatest extent possible, we are endeavouring to make sure that this statewide analysis system is automated so that it is efficient and quick and as reliable and free of errors as possible. And at the systems level, after Lee gathers all the data from each of the project proponents, what he's able to do is combine this into a massive geodatabase, which includes information about the area of projects, about what they're coded to in the logic, and also it includes the summary data from any of the condition monitoring that is undertaken across the whole state. So it all looks pretty complex, but very, very clever. So the 5th and final component of the framework is about telling the story. Once we have all the data together and we have information available on what's been achieved through the projects collectively, this component is about making sure that we're communicating that effectively with investors and the broader public. This component is about telling that great, compelling story through a range of communication products. Importantly, we've set it up so that we can tell the story at a range of different levels with varying amounts of detail according to the audience. So you can have a one-pager which just summarises the stats. You can also have more detailed information through project stories and other summary data that comes through this system. A lot of the data is spatial in nature and it makes for fantastic graphics. So we try to make the most of that. Once again, it's not a condition report card. It's not a catchment or a landscape or a state of the environment condition report card. It is a card or it is a communication product about the difference that a particular program of investment has made in the areas where the projects have been undertaken. Over the last years, we've been playing a lot with Power BI, and it's a fantastic system for visualizing a lot of data, and it also enables whoever the audience is to do their own tailored filtering and slicing and dicing of the data. So it's become a fantastic tool for quickly showing the achievements of a particular program. So we're able to give a bit of an overview of the extent of projects across Queensland and broadly where they're located, as well as some of that fantastic widget-based data that it's always great to be able to communicate to members of parliament or ministers or key senior executives. How many trees have been planted, how many kilometres of fencing has been undertaken, how many off-stream watering points have been installed. This all comes from the deliverables data, and it's a really exciting thing to be able to showcase. And in 2022, we were able to produce for the first time ever a report card for the 4 years of the Natural Resources Investment Program, which really outlined the stats and the figures of what the program had achieved in those 4 years. Really exciting achievement. We worked very, very closely with the department to determine what information they would like and how they would like it to be structured, the look, feel of it. So as you can see on this slide, we were able to produce a report card on a page, which was the very highest level of stats on the achievements of that particular program. And in addition to that, this report card on a page was supplemented by a range of other more detailed pages which outlined some of the deliverables, some of the small stories, some quotes, and the photos that everybody loves. So altogether, the report card provided a really solid, demonstrable, evidence-based summary of what that program had achieved. We're in discussions with the Queensland government at the moment in terms of what a report card for the NRMRQ program might look like, all of course driven by the data that is uploaded through the Statewide Indicators Framework system. Well done, guys. So just in summary, those were the 5 critical components of the Statewide Indicators Framework: the program logic, the data collection methods, the smart tools for the regions, the statewide data analysis systems, and the investment outcomes reporting and communication products. And it's really the combination of all of these 5 components that makes up the Statewide Indicators Framework. They are all critically important, and without any one of them, we wouldn't be able to tell the story that we've been able to tell. So I hope you've got a good sense of the structure of the SWIF, what it is, what it contains, and its 5 components. Before we move on to a more detailed discussion around how it operates within your organisation and how you work within it, I just wanted to highlight a few of the unique characteristics of the SWIF and how it's been developed. It was a really collaborative endeavour. It was a fabulous partnership between the Queensland Government and regional NRM organisations from the outset in its design, development, and the implementation of it. And we continue with that fabulous collaborative arrangement with the department, and I think that makes a huge difference to the extent to which it works for them as well as working for us. But as well as a great commitment from the Queensland Government, we have had really strong ownership by regional NRM organisations, because this framework has been developed by them, for them, not by an external party and then imposed on them. So there is still a very strong commitment to its success. And part of that is because the data stays within the region or within the organisation who collected it. So it is a very valuable system for a project, an organisation delivering a project. There's a lot of things you can do with that data above and beyond sending it up to Lee for the statewide story. We really tried to keep it simple. I think a lot of this has been tried in a lot of places before, and in making a system comprehensive and complex, I think it's hard to get even past the first base. So we kept it very, very simple from the beginning and decided that if we can focus on telling a great story about a very simple thing at the beginning, then we can build on it in terms of complexity as we go on. We also made sure it was very flexible so it can be adapted to be used for other programs, and we love the idea that in the future we can be telling a much broader Queensland story about what's happening with natural resource management well beyond the projects that are funded through the Queensland government. And importantly, as we've talked about, we've used mainstream systems, out-of-the-box systems wherever possible, and we've maximised alignment with existing methods and other means of data collection. So there you have it. That's the why and the what. We're going to be jumping into the how very soon, but you've been listening to me for 30 minutes. So if you need a bit of a break, this would be a great time to go and grab a cuppa. I'll be back with you soon. Okay, enough talk about theory, enough. So here's a bit of a diagram of what I call the SWIF end-to-end process. So let's say you've been successful in getting money for a project. What are you going to do? What are the first things you're going to do in order to be able to report your project into the Statewide Indicators framework? Okay, the first thing is you're going to map your project and you're going to code it. Many projects have multiple project sites, and each of those sites will need to be mapped and coded individually. So this is not just about mapping the entire area within which your project occurs, but it's about mapping those very specific sites where you will be intervening and where you hope you'll make a difference. And it also includes the coding, being very clear about exactly what difference you're hoping to make according to the program logic of the Statewide Indicators framework. Great. So you've mapped your project and you've coded it. You're going to go out there and you're going to do some work, and you may decide to do some baseline data collection. So out you go with your app and you collect your data in the field. You collect data about the condition of the site. There'll be another app for you to collect information about exactly what you're going to do there and your deliverables. All the data gets collected into your Survey 123 apps, submitted, and then once you've submitted it, it's stored in your regional database. If you'd like to know more about your regional database, speak to your GIS person. Now, once it's in the regional database, the GIS person runs that Python script I was telling you about, and that does some analysis on the data. It analyzes both your mapping and your coding and the data that you've collected through your apps. And that result provides summary and analyzed information, and that goes back into your regional database. So you have your raw data, and then you have your analysed data back in your regional database. It's the analysed data that gets sent to Lee as part of the statewide roll-up process. He collects it from all of the different project proponents. He does some analysis on it, and then we produce the statewide dashboards and reports. But cleverly, you can also, from your own regional data, produce your own regional dashboards and reports to be able to report to your own boards, communities, and partners on the achievements that you've made to date with your projects. So let's have a bit of a closer look at those steps. It all starts with quality project mapping and coding. The mapping and coding provides information on the what, where, and why of your project. Obviously, the spatial unit that you map is the where, but the what is described by the deliverable that you code your project site to, and the why is described by the outcome you code your site to. So here's a bit of a visual of the consistent geodatabase that all project proponents have. And this is where you map and code your project according to which of the deliverables you are delivering and which of the outcomes you're hoping to contribute towards with your project. It is so important for the mapping and the coding to be accurate, because this is the foundation of the SWIF. We report on the hectares of the project area and the hectares of the change that is occurring within those project areas. Poor quality mapping means we can be grossly wrong in what we are claiming. So you really have to have in mind that, hand on your heart, if anyone comes and checks, the area that you have mapped is the area where you're intervening, and it is the area where you anticipate you will see a change in the landscape or in the natural asset, primarily as a result of what you have done with your project. Okay, the mapping is done. What's next? As I mentioned in the SWIF end-to-end process, you'll be out in the field and you'll be gathering data using one of the Survey 123 apps. Now, which app you use depends on two things: which deliverable you have coded your project site to and which outcome you have coded your project site to. So we have apps for the outcomes. We have apps for LCAT and for VegCat and for WetCat, and more of the cats are coming. So if you're doing a project that is endeavouring to improve the condition of vegetation, you'll be using the VegCat method and the VegCat app. If it's a land condition project site, you'll be using the LCAT method and the LCAT app. So this is recording data that relates to the above the red line difference in the condition of that particular project site where you're working. Obviously, you'll probably need to do a baseline before you intervene, and then every year or every couple of years, you will go back and do a follow-up assessment to compare the scores as a way of determining whether or not you've made a difference. So as well as the above the red line apps, the CAT apps if you like, there are apps for each of the below the red line deliverables as well. So if you're doing threat mitigation in that project site, then you will complete a threat mitigation form in the threat mitigation app. And that could be dealing with a weed threat or a pest animal threat or a fire threat. You might be doing revegetation, in which case you'll use the revegetation app for the below the red line deliverable. Okay. A really important step which is often missed is quality assurance of the data. Ideally, you'd be very careful in the field and you would make sure that you're entering the data correctly and that everything is lining up, etc. But it's also really important when you get back to the office to do a quick QA of the data. You can check for things like, is the mapping correct? Is the polygon that you have drawn for your project site really representative of the area that you expect to see a difference in? You can check to make sure that your survey 123 points for your VegCat or your LCAT or your threat mitigation are actually located inside the project site, because if they're not inside the project site, they will not be analysed by the automated script. You can also have a look at your Survey 123 data using the Survey 123 online app, or download a PDF of the data and just run your eye over it to make sure that it all looks correct. The more quality assurance you can build into the project, to your data collection at this stage, the easier it will be in the end, because once the analysis happens, a lot of the problems with the analysis are because of dirty data. So I can't stress enough how important it is to just check your data and make sure that it's clean and accurate and correct, and that the scores that you're seeing coming out of that data seem right to you. Most organisations have built a web map for their staff, and this is a fantastic QA tool for you to use. The web map should bring together your project mapping and coding. It should also bring in any of the point data from your Survey 123 apps, so that you can have a look at all your project sites and zoom into them and make sure that, one, the mapping looks correct, two, that you have the right forms and apps inside those polygons according to the way the polygon is coded. So if you've coded it as a vegetation outcome, it's no point if you have LCAT records in there. You need to have VegCat records in there. And the third thing you can do is to make sure that any data that you've collected is actually located inside the boundary of the polygon that it relates to. You can also check for where there's data missing. So you might have a couple of project sites where for some reason there doesn't seem to be any Survey 123 data points, and you know you've been there to collect the data. So what happened there? What happened to the data? Where did it all go? Where did it go wrong? So utilizing the web map that your GIS officer has built in your organization is a really, really great idea, and it gives you a lot more control and visibility over your own data. You can filter it and sort it, zoom in, zoom out. So yeah, make the most of these smart tools that are on offer. So the next stage of the data journey, once you've entered it into your regional database and you've QA'd it and you know it's correct, is for your GIS officer to run the automated custom built Python script. Now this does fabulous things. For example, with your VegCat records, if you have 3 or 4 different VegCat plots within a particular project site, so within a polygon, the script will automatically average the scores for all of those 3 or 4 plots. It will also distinguish between the scores from 1 year and the scores from the next year or 2 years later, and then it will determine the difference. So the script automatically analyzes your plot data, including determining the change over time. Now the product that comes out of that is an Excel sheet that then gets sent off to Lee, and he adds it all together across the state, and he's able to then populate the statewide dashboards with that data. So this is a process that is good to know about, but it is your GIS people who will really understand how to run this script and what the product coming out the other end is. But savvy organisations won't just send their summary data off to Lee and enable it to be part of the statewide story. They'll also use that data in their own region to generate their own reports and statistics and dashboards as well. And everybody has received a regional version of the Power BI dashboard that automatically generates a whole range of visualizations that is driven by the data that is produced through the Python scripting. So you have this tool at your disposal. You can use it, you can modify it, you can build your own, but it's just great to make the most of the really valuable data that you're collecting rather than just seeing it as a reporting requirement and you send it to Lee. Really think about how you can use the data in your region to tell your own regional story to a whole range of stakeholders. So as I'm banging on about dashboards, I just thought I'd give you a little bit more of an overview of the range of the dashboards that are currently available. I just wanted to also point out that it's not just the regional NRM organisations that have access to this dashboard and to the Python scripting tools. Any organisation that has an NRMRQ project can have access to these data analysis and data viewing tools. The main point is that you can tailor it to whatever your organisation's needs are. So let's just have a quick look at the few different pages that we've got in the dashboards, at present at least. So there are three main pages or sets of pages to just talk you through. And this is the statewide one that you're currently looking at, but the regional ones are complete copies of the statewide one. They just only accept your regional data, and obviously the numbers and the spatial representation of projects will only relate to your particular area. So the first page, the first tab on the dashboard is just an overview. It's a simple summary of the number of project sites, the general location of those project sites, but it is not very specific. It is in a general area to avoid revealing the sensitivities of some projects. You can filter it according to the program that it is being invested under, the catchment, the state electorate, the local authority. You can also filter it according to the dates that it was started or that the project started or ended. So while the first tab was really about the broad areas and the numbers of sites and how and which of the outcomes they're delivering on, this second tab is more about the widgets. So this now takes you to the below the red line information, the numbers of hectares of threat mitigation, the numbers of hectares of gully repair or kilometres of fencing. But it's also filterable. You can filter according to spatial areas like catchments or electorates or local authorities, or you can filter according to programs. So the same range of filters across the top for this deliverable data. The next set of tabs on the dashboard are the ones that I think are really exciting, because this is where the rubber really hits the road. These are the pages that provide data on the above the red line outcomes. So this is where your information from your VegCat or your LCAT or your WetCat assessments is analysed. These pages can be a little confronting because you may have some sites that appear to have gone backwards because of since you started working there. I think though it's really a valuable quality assurance tool as well, because after the analysis is done, if you're having a look through your dashboard and you realise that there was one area of 1,296 hectares where we seem to have gone backwards according to our VegCat scores, you've really got the opportunity then to dig into that particular site and the VegCat records that are associated with that site and find out what was going on. Did things really go backwards because there was some uncontrollable event? Or was it user error? Did somebody enter something incorrectly and provide you with an incorrect figure? Did something in the app not quite work? Did one of the plots not register, etc.? So it's a really valuable QA tool, as well as a fabulous analysis tool to be able to report back not on just how many hectares you did vegetation improvement work in, but in how many hectares have shown improvement over time, and also how much improvement they've shown. Once again, it's filterable by all the same types of factors, including landholder and catchment, and even filterable against the different difference categories. So this particular type of dashboard is available for VegCat, LCAT and WetCat at present. So I encourage you to have a bit of a look and figure out how you can make this work for you. As I've said several times during this recording, we always envisage the statewide indicators framework being used more broadly than the state government investment, being used for other sources of investment and other projects within Queensland. And the vision was always that we would be able to tell a much broader and more comprehensive story about what's going on and what we've achieved with regard to natural resource management across Queensland. We have had a lot of support for that vision, but there has been also a lot of discussion around the costs associated with providing data into the statewide indicators framework, but in particular the outcomes monitoring data, the condition monitoring data. So we've also built in a little bit of flexibility to the framework so that even if you don't have the resources within your budget to do fully blown condition monitoring, you can still provide data at a state that can be feeding into a statewide system at a range of levels. So let me explain what I mean. You're familiar with the above the red line, the outcome level, where we articulate the difference we hope to make, the change we hope to see in our natural assets. Below the red line, we've got our deliverables, what we did, the milestones we did, and I've added a yellow line in there, and below that I've put the description of the project, the what, the where, and the why. So with regard to the what, the where, and the why, the description, we have our mapping and coding system in place, and that geodatabase generates statistics on the area of our project, whether it's delivering on a vegetation or a land condition or a wetlands outcome, and the deliverable. Above the yellow line and below the red line, we have our deliverables level. This is where we describe what we did, what milestones we delivered for the contracted investment that we got. And this generates widgets and numbers, such as how many hectares of threat mitigation we've undertaken, how many kilometres of fencing. Above the red line, we have our monitoring methods, our condition monitoring methods, and these provide us with change data, the extent of change that has occurred as a result of our project. So 3 levels of information, if you like. When it comes to reporting at the statewide level, the first dashboard that I showed you earlier, the one that gives an overview of the projects, the amount of hectares that are under a land condition treatment, or the number of hectares in a particular region or a particular area, that is all generated simply through the geodatabase. That is just the what, where, and why of the projects. Even at the second level, the second page of the dashboard that I showed you, that is generated simply from the deliverables apps, which are very, very simple to use. They cost virtually nothing. You have them available, and it's simply a matter of being a little bit more diligent in filling the app in when the works are undertaken. So even those two levels alone can be undertaken consistently across the state for all projects at a very, very little cost. Of course, when it comes to the condition monitoring, where we are going out into the field and doing our condition plots and reporting back on the extent of change as a result of our project, that's where it becomes much more expensive. And I think we would all like to be able to do that, but some projects don't have the timeframes or the budgets available to do proper condition monitoring. So I guess my message is, right now we are in a strong position in this state to, at a minimum, be able to report on all of our investments at those two description and deliverable levels. Okay, in the last couple of minutes of this video, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the human side of our projects and less about the widgets and the numbers. Some of you might have noticed when I flashed up the report card from the NRMRQ that it actually contained a people and communities page. And some of you who are familiar with the Statewide Indicators Framework program logic will know that there are outcomes and deliverables related to people and communities, including landholders, traditional owners, partners, etc. It's a really important part of the framework that has probably received less attention over the last couple of years, because we've been very much focused on trying to get our data analysis systems happening for the deliverables and the outcomes apps. There is a people and communities guide which steps you through the requirements for this component of the Statewide Indicators Framework. In summary, it requires you to have a semi-structured conversation with project participants at the end of the time frame that they are involved in the project. They could be landholders, they could be community groups, they could be science partners, they could be traditional owners. We're asking people to do this with some level of consistency. So there are three core aspects that we ask people to touch base on. One of them is the level of satisfaction of the project partners. The second one is the extent to which project partners perceive they have benefited from participating in the project. And the third one is the project partners or participants' commitment to sustaining any changes that have occurred as a result of the project. In the People and Communities Guide, you'll see this explained in a little bit more detail. We're more than happy if organisations want to conduct a larger survey and have other components covered, but we would just ask people to be a little bit consistent about the way they ask and capture the responses from project participants around these 3 or 4 areas. There is even a Survey 123 app for this. So if you would like to use the app for your survey, it is available, and the data process will be the same as for the other apps. Alternatively, you can use any other system that you already use for surveys, Excel, SurveyMonkey, a paper form. That's completely up to you. Just finally, I'd like to talk quickly about project stories. The Statewide Indicators Framework was always envisaged as having a range of layers of information. So you have the very broad information around the total area of the project. You have information around the extent of change, and you have people and communities information. What we also wanted was to be able to provide some short project stories which showcase the richness and diversity of the projects that are being delivered across Queensland, showcasing innovations and the people aspects of the projects. So we will be finalising some project stories guidelines and a broad template, but in summary, the purpose is for this to be the opportunity to communicate some of those nuggets of gold, some of those fabulous special things about your project, some of the things that make you zing about your projects. NRRP will be requiring at least one story per reporting period. Bear in mind, this is a maximum of 2 pages with a couple of photos in it. It's a very small piece of work. They are public communication pieces, so shouldn't include any sensitive information that can't be shared publicly. I think it's really important that we are able to showcase why natural resource management initiatives in Queensland are really special and really important. And these short project stories from across the state combined together provide us with a really rich tapestry of the work that's being undertaken. They're also really useful little bits of information for the department to provide to members of parliament or ministers who might be visiting an area and who might like to know about what's going on in that area. So watch this space, but be ready to capture a couple of stories per year on why your project is so special. We are nearing the end. I just wanted to finish off by saying we began this video and we began this whole journey with a vision of being able to tell a consistent, credible and compelling story. And it is no longer a vision, it is a reality. We have the tools, we have the systems in place to do this. We have been doing it and we can continue to do it even better into the future. The essential ingredients from your part, though, are commitment and discipline. The commitment to do it and the discipline to do it well. So really all we can do is provide the framework, provide the tools, provide the methods, provide the support, be willing to listen to any of your complaints or suggestions and do what we can to fix them. But the quality of the storytelling here in Queensland is really up to you. So please give it a go. Make sure that if you have any questions or queries or there's something you don't understand, you contact myself or Lee Blacklock from NRM Regions Queensland. Our contact details are on this page. We are very, very happy to hear any suggestions or any issues that you have at any time. So please definitely get in touch with us. And on that note, I would like to say thank you very, very much for sticking with this video. I aimed for it to be 1 hour and it's just a few minutes over. I just did want to say though, I'm very, very passionate about this framework, and it's not because I'm passionate about a framework, it's because I'm passionate about the work we do and I'm passionate about telling the story and securing more investment to do more great work for our natural resource assets and for our communities in Queensland. So all the best and good luck, and thank you for watching.